Good mythical morning, everyone. It's the one and only notorious glorious V, the Gorilla Economist, coming to you live on this edition of Rogue News in the Morning, where I give you the news, the views, and all the information important to you. Check me out, RogueNews.com. It's being revamped, being worked on, so excuse the mess, folks. Excuse the mess. I got our guys Kung Fu and Frank. They're working on it, making it better than ever. So, and also follow me on Twitter at Real Rogue News and Rogue News on every single podcasting app known to humanity. We are everywhere you want us to be, plus a bag of chips. With that also being said, folks, check out our paid sponsors. Paid sponsors. Excuse me, I'm like wiping the coals out of my eyes for some strange reason. Anyway, our paid sponsors, watchustrade.io, watchustrade.io. And, if you want to learn how to trade, there's the new Pintrest IPO, which I'll briefly touch upon, and on how you guys can get involved. Speaking of Pinterest, man, I mean, check this out. Anyway, I'll get into that later. Anyway, I'll get into that later. So, check it out, watchustrade.io. Also, check out mycbdedibles.com, mycbdedibles.com. For all your CBD needs, baby. CBD is the way to be. So check it out, mycbdedibles.com. With that being said, let's get into it, folks. Let's get into it. A lot of things happening, guys. A lot of things happening. Where do I begin with all the shenanigans? Where do I begin? Let's start off with Pinterest. Okay, let's start off with Pinterest. We have, as all of you know, and then you might say to yourself, V, why the hell? Why in God's name are you starting off with Pinterest? Well, Pinterest seeks up to 1.28 billion in an IPO below the 2017 market value. Pinterest Incorporated is seeking to raise as much as 1.28 billion in the U.S. initial public offering that could value the company below the amount it reached in its last private valuation. The maker of the online inspiration boards, which my missus is absolutely addicted to. It's pretty cool, man. Pinterest is pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. And I have one too for, I just cars and watches. What can I say? I'm pretty boring. Cars and watches. So it's a cool product. It's a nice little visual board that you have. The maker of the online inspiration board is offering 75 million shares for 15 to 17 bucks a piece, according to a filing on Monday, based on the total number of Class A and Class B shares outstanding after the offer. If it is priced at the top of the range, that would give Pinterest a market valuation of $9 billion. According to a data compiled by Bloomberg, its fully diluted value could be even higher. In its last private funding round in 2017, the company raised $150 million for a total valuation of $12.3 billion. Pinterest will start its IPO roadshow in New York Monday and travel to cities including Boston, San Francisco, Chicago to market the shares according to the term sheet reviewed by Bloomberg. It aims to price the stock after the market closes on April the 17th. San Francisco-based Pinterest accelerated its offering to capitalize on the hot U.S. market IPOs, which expects to see a flurry of U.S. tech companies go public this year. In March, number 2 U.S. ride-handling giant Lyft raised its price shares at $17, the largest offering from a tech upstart since Snap went public 2 years ago. Lyft was the biggest U.S. listing after the partial government shutdown dampened the first quarter listings. Momentum after dipping below the IPO price, Lyft is now trading around 75 bucks. This is what we've come to. This is what we've come to. Now, before I go on the rant, guys, I will say this. Okay, I will say this, and I want to bring this up real quick and just knock this out of the way. Game of Thrones season 8. Game of Thrones season 8 is going to be watched by 1 billion people. They said 1 billion people. If you have not seen Game of Thrones season 8, let me see when that's coming out. Game of Thrones season 8. That is set to start. When is it starting? April 14th. That is next week, folks. Next week is going to be Game of Thrones season 8 is going to begin. The world is bracing. I'm bracing. I am a huge fan of the original works by George R.R. Martin. I have all the books. I have all the books. A Game of Thrones, A Feast for Crows, A Clash of Kings, A Storm of Swords, A Dance with Dragons. I got it all, man. I got it all. Love it. Love the books. I was reading them back in 2006 and 2007. Amazing books. So anyway, that's going to be awesome. Love it. It's wonderful. Watch it. If you haven't binge watched it, start binge watching it now. Just get an HBO Go subscription just for the fact that you can watch Game of Thrones. Because after this, I'm canceling. I'm canceling my HBO. I have no reason to watch HBO except for Game of Thrones. And also another thing, people keep telling me to watch Billions. Frank's always bugging me. He's threatening that he won't be my friend anymore unless I watch Billions. So I got to take him up on that offer. He's like the third guy. Gus Demas. Gus would always bug me as well. Hey, man, you got to watch Billions. So I'm like, all right, fine. I'll watch Billions. But anyway, check it out, Game of Thrones. Back to Pinterest. Back to Pinterest real quick. I want you to think about Pinterest. Everything that I listed for you. Pinterest, Lyft, Uber, all of these quote-unquote stock companies. These are companies who do not produce anything. You understand? What they do is these are social media companies, right? Lyft, what does Lyft make? It's just an aggregating portal that allows people to be their own taxi drivers. That's all the rideshare. Do they make the cars? No. Do they? No. They're basically they're a social media for ride sharing. So all these companies that are coming out, Lyft and Uber and Pinterest and Snapchat and it's all the same genre. It's all the same genre. It's all about social this, social that. See, this is what's terrifying. What's terrifying, folks, is that a social company that makes nothing, that produces nothing, can have a $9 billion valuation. It is amazing to me that social companies could have valuations greater than actual real companies that actually really make things. It's beyond me. Can someone please explain it to me? If somebody told me 30 years ago that there's going to be the rise of social media companies, whether it's ride sharing, and which is really a social media type thing, you could share your ride and you could comment about your driver and leave a positive review and and social media, all this, right? This is all we're creating here. What's terrifying to me is there are companies out there that are creating real things, real solutions with real products, and they never see valuations this high. This shows you the insanity of Wall Street. It shows you the insanity because these companies, folks, have no intrinsic value. Their value is driven and it's predicated upon what? Something that they produce? No. Something on you produce. It reminds me of this old biblical adage. There was an old prophecy spoken by the apostle Peter. And what he said was this. He said, "Behold, in the last days they shall make merchandise of you." And I thought about that. I'd always think about, I think about that. I'm like, maybe he's referring to some prosperity preachers. Maybe he's referring to some, one of these prosperity preachers who are out there trying to, fleece the flock kind of deal. And I get that, and that's certainly applicable. But look at the world we're living in today. How are companies getting a 9, 10, 11, 12, $100 billion valuation based on not what they produce, but based upon you, based upon your sweat, based upon your creativity, based upon your personality, your likes, your dislikes, your interests? You should be mad, folks, that these companies are getting multi-billion-dollar valuations but nobody is giving you a multi-billion-dollar valuation. You should be angered that the multi-billion-dollar valuations are given to these phony baloney companies. Companies whose only job is to suck data and to fleece you. You are the merchandise, my friend. You might say to yourself, well, the ride sharing app, it's providing a service. I'm sharing a ride, blah, 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 blah. No. What is happening is that you are the product. You are the product. There is no difference. Oh, think about it. You are your own taxi driver. You are your own hotel room with Airbnb and Homestead and all these other websites. Ride sharing, home sharing, room sharing. And these companies are coming out with these insane valuations. Do you think it's right that companies that don't make anything, that don't produce anything, have these insane valuations? I, for one, don't. I mean, I find it laughable that you had idiotic companies. I remember so fondly. The valuation from Facebook. I said to myself, Jesus, the Facebook valuation is, they have a higher market cap than ExxonMobil. How's that even possible? And ExxonMobil makes in a month what Facebook does in a year in terms of profits. It's completely beyond me. And it's symptomatic, folks. It is symptomatic of the greater economy and we as a country in general. Symptomatic. Unreal. Anyway, I got some explosive news. You all heard about the Homeland Security. What's her name? The Homeland Security person, Christian Gillibrand. Did you guys know that the NIXVM cult, the NIXVM sex cult, which has, it's beyond that individual who started the cult. There's actually a lot of ties that goes into MIT. There's a lot of ties with a CIA op that ran girls out of Cambodia. W was on the show and he was speaking about it. There's a lot of ties to what's going on with NIXVM, MIT, and everything else. There's a lot of things going on here, folks. A lot of things, right? So now Christian Gillibrand's dad seems to have some connections with the NIXVM cult, and all of a sudden, now, of course, with the border debacle, she's stepped down. And you have a person. You have Lauren Salzman. I'd like to thank Bry Guy, who's over at the Watchers Trade Room, who shared this bit of news with me. Bry, thank you. I appreciate it. And guys, if you're not on Watchers Trade, it's a great community to be in. We have an off-topic discussion. I'm in there. You can ask me what you want me to talk about, and I'll talk about it. So join the Watchers Trade Room. It's pretty amazing. And in terms of the Pintrest IPO, when Pintrest comes out, you want to learn how to get an options contract and trade that bad boy. We can show you how you can make money off that as well. So check it out. Watch us trade. Okay, check it out. Lauren Salzman gives cooperation agreement with the feds. I meant she imprisoned Mexican women and lied to women about DOS being led by a man, Rainier. On March 25th, Lauren Salzman, 42, pleaded guilty on one count of racketeering and one count of racketeering conspiracy in the NIXVM case. Although it appears that she signed a cooperation agreement with the feds, all the pertinent information concerning this was redacted from the published transcript for the court hearing. What we do know is Lauren signed a 10-page agreement plus a 1-page Exhibit A attached to it. The agreement is not even available to the public. It is dated March 25th, 2019. Frank Report has been told by a source familiar with the proceedings that Lauren signed a cooperation agreement present at her hearing before Judge Nicholas Varoufakis, where Moira Kempenza, Tanya Hajar, Assistant U.S. Attorneys Hector Diaz, Andrea Tozzoli, and Quarles and Bradley, attorneys for law. During the proceeding, the judge asked Lauren a series of questions concerning her understandings and competence. He explained that the maximum term for imprisonment is 20 years for each of her two charges. There is no minimum term, and the sentence imposed on each count may run consecutively, that is, one after the other. The judge explained that he would consult federal guidelines that provide sentencing ranges that he was not bound by. Basically, this woman's going away for life. The judge told Lauren that no one knows today what your exact guideline range will be. After some advisors, the judge asked Lauren, how do you plead to the charges? And she says, I plead guilty. Are you pleading guilty voluntarily or you're in free will? Yes, Your Honor, I am. Had anyone threatened you and forced you to plead guilty? No, sir. Other than the agreement with the government, has anybody made you promise that you've caused you to plead guilty? No, sir. Look at this. She pleads guilty. She pleads guilty. See, folks, the NIXVM thing has never been done away with. Yeah, there was a documentary movie about it, but it was never. The investigations are still ongoing. It hasn't ceased. It hasn't stopped. It hasn't whatsoever been sidelined. It's marching forward, and names are going down. And this is a huge thing. How this will play out in the longer term will be very interesting. Also, case in point, that we know that this was a CIA setup. This was a cocaine import agency setup, this whole NIXVM thing. We also know, on a side note, that John Jihad Brennan is the man who is at the focal point of the entire Russia collusion investigation. Johnny Jihad Brennan. The heat is also turning in on him. So these are some of the things that I'm hearing from my sources deep within the grapevine, folks. Deep within the grapevine. So, a lot of things going on. And it's pretty interesting to me that as these things are happening, you have the NIXVM takedowns that are continuing to happen. We have the heat being turned up on Johnny Jihad Brennan. And while all of this happens, folks, all of this happens, you know what still happens? You know what still continues? Our bloody, insane, murderous, schizophrenic, retarded, backward foreign policy. The neocons are still in charge. The neocons are letting us all know who is in charge. In fact, recently, folks, this here's a great little article from the UNZ review, the UNZ review, right? Trump's neocons see Erdogan as their ticket to a region-wide Middle East war. I mean, what is wrong with these guys? I mean, look at these. These are the guys who got their asses kicked in high school. They're the most violent guys who were the nerds who were picked on, who had their asses kicked in high school. All of a sudden, become the most violent, vitriolic war hawks you've ever seen. You've never seen this type of behavior from anyone, right? It's insane. It's insane. Turkish troops and armored units are massed along Turkey's southern border, waiting orders to invade northern Syria. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan wants to clear a 10-mile deep swath of land east of the Euphrates River in order to remove terrorist-linked YPG militants. The proposed offensive would put U.S. Special Forces in the line of fire, which significantly increases the likelihood of U.S. casualties. If American troops are killed or wounded by the Turkish operation, Washington will respond in force, leading to a potentially catastrophic face-off between two NATO allies. The possibility of a violent clash between Turkey and the United States has never been greater than it is today. On Wednesday, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo warned Turkey that any unilateral action in Syria would have devastating consequences. Pompeo's comments were intended to intimidate Erdogan, who stated on Tuesday that the military offensive would begin shortly after last week's elections. If Erdogan proceeds with his plan, Pompeo will undoubtedly give the military the go-ahead for retaliatory attacks on the Turkish army. This will either lead to a speedy retreat by Turkey or asymmetrical strikes on U.S. strategic assets across the region. In any event, the fracas with Turkey is bound to widen the chasm between the two former allies, forcing Erdogan to reconsider his commitment to this Western alliance. Any further deterioration in relations between the U.S. and Turkey could result in a dramatic shift in the global balance of power. Washington's problems with Erdogan began years before the current dust-up. Turkish leader has always steered an independent foreign policy, which has been a constant source of frustration on the West. And you can see that is why they did the whole entire coup against Erdogan. During the war in Iraq, Erdogan refused to allow U.S. to use Turkish air bases to conduct their operations. Presently, he's purchasing air defense systems from Russia, S-400, which Pence has strongly condemned. He has attended summits in Sochi with Moscow and Tehran in order to find a political settlement for the war in Syria. He signed a contract with Gazprom that will make his country the energy hub of southern Europe, and he has been harshly critical of U.S. support for its Kurdish proxies in Syria. Most of the friction between Erdogan and the U.S. has been brought by Washington's flagrant disregard for Turkey's security concerns. The current crisis is just another self-inflicted wound, like the flappid coup in 2016, which backfired spectacularly, strengthening Erdogan's grip on power while fueling widespread distrust of the United States. Unreal. So now they're hoping. These guys are sick. They're hoping that Erdogan does something stupid. They're hoping that he would strike out, that he would try to attack the Kurds. And in the process of attacking the Kurds, folks, they are hoping that some U.S. troops get killed. I want you to think about that for a second. Who on earth willingly puts their so-called precious and oh so valuable troops in harm's way on suicide missions, hoping for more chaos, hoping that the conflagration will create a greater and wider regional war? Who on earth do you think does that? Nobody normal would do that. Nobody with a brain would do that. But yet these guys do it. And they're happy to. That's the sickest thing about this whole entire thing. The neocons are mentally deranged. They're happy to. They don't care the level of destabilization. They don't care what the greater blowback is. They don't understand. So, folks, their plans are what it's going to do. It's what's in it for me now. What's in it for me now? And that's the whole entire thing here. What's in it for me now? They don't care about regional stability, long-term problems. Will this cause a blowback in 20 years, 15 years? No. And this is why what's happening also in the Ukraine is pretty funny and how it ties in. Now, as all of you know, Ukraine, the whole Maidan was a U.S. project. It was a U.S. project. And you should know that the Ukraine was a project, a coup operation that caused an ouster and to put in a Euro-friendly anti-Russian gang in charge. And what happens? Their puppet, Poroshenko, is gone. He only got 15% of the electoral votes. He's done for. He's done for. And prior to the Maidan, folks, and here's the greatest point. Prior to the Maidan, Ukraine was an up-and-coming economy. It was doing great. I mean, the economy was doing good. Things were doing very well for Ukraine. The Victoria Nuland F the EU coup has backfired gloriously. Ukraine today is the poorest country. The poorest country. in the Eastern European theater. It's pretty much dirt poor. Currency, worthless. People, demoralized. Horrible. Horrible. They've lost their sovereignty. They've lost their gold. They've lost their pensions, their quality of life, all down the toilet. Their nation has been ripped apart and has been turned into a failed state, run by oligarchs, drug lords, and human traffickers. It is the poorest nation in Europe. The economy completely destroyed by corruption. The wealth and resources of the land completely stripped from its people. And you wonder why the Crimeans who saw this coming a mile away, they're like, yeah, we're going to go, we're going to vote and we're going to be part of Russia. And those who were there overnight when Crimea was no longer part of Ukraine and became part of Russia, instantaneously, just like that. You see where their quality of life is compared to their former Ukrainian brethren. It is night and day, folks. Night and day. Ukraine is just another case study. Is another case study of what happens, folks. What happens when the deep state gets its hands on a country. That's all it is. That's all it is. And these guys are still here. And why? Why are they allowed to still have levers of control and influence into the foreign policy? Why are they allowed to do that? It's beyond me. It's completely beyond me. Anyway, folks, that is the end of the broadcast for the day. Follow me on Twitter at RealRogueNews. Join the Watchers Trade Room. I'm over there all the time. And also, more importantly, folks, I will be launching something new pretty soon as a way for you to directly support the works of the gorilla and the ape himself. And also, with that being said, I'm over and out. Enjoy the rest of your day. Tomorrow, I will be on full force, no doubt. Enjoy your day, folks. Cheers.